Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Introduction. Imagine a young man, barely out of his 20s, with no money, no connections, and nothing but a fire in his heart. He looks like an ordinary tramp, worn out from a long journey, having traveled hundreds of miles not in a comfortable train car, but by hiding away on a freight train. He finally arrives at his destination, the laboratory of the world's greatest inventor, Thomas A. Edison. He walks in and announces, not that he's looking for a job, but that he has come to go into business with Mr. Edison himself. Now, picture Edison, a man who has seen it all, looking at this determined but disheveled young man. Edison would later say, "He stood there before me, looking like an ordinary tramp, but there was something in the expression of his face which conveyed the impression that he was determined to get what he had come after." Edison saw something he recognized, not in the man's clothes, but in his mind. He saw a burning, unshakable desire. That young man was Edwin C. Barnes. And his story is the perfect place to begin our journey today, because it holds the very key to one of the most powerful books ever written on the subject of success. Hello, and welcome. Today, we're going to explore a book that has been called the grandfather of all personal development literature. It's a book that has sold tens of millions of copies since it was first published in 1937 and is credited with creating more millionaires than any other. That book is Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. But this isn't just a book about making money. Hill himself said that riches can't always be measured in dollars. This is a philosophy for achievement in any walk of life. It's a blueprint for turning your dreams, whatever they may be, into reality. The story behind this book is just as incredible as the lessons within it. Napoleon Hill was born into poverty in a one-room cabin in Virginia. As a young reporter, his big break came when he was given an assignment to interview the richest man in the world at the time, the steel magnate Andrew Carnegie. That interview was supposed to last a few hours. It lasted for 3 days. At the end of it, Carnegie challenged Hill with a life-altering proposition. What if he were to spend the next 20 years, without pay, studying America's most successful men to uncover a formula for success that could be used by the average person? Hill said yes in less than a minute. And so began a 2-decade-long quest. Hill interviewed over 500 of the wealthiest and most influential people of his time, men like Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, Alexander Graham Bell, and John D. Rockefeller. What he discovered, what Carnegie believed, was that success wasn't an accident. It followed certain laws that anyone could learn and apply. Today, I'm going to share with you the very core of that philosophy. By the end of our time together, you will understand the secret that Andrew Carnegie shared with the young Napoleon Hill all those years ago, a secret that can help you become the master of your own fate and the captain of your own soul. Book summary. So, what is this grand secret? Hill teases it throughout the entire book, mentioning that it appears over 100 times, waiting for those who are ready to see it. But he never gives it a single name. And that's intentional. He learned from Andrew Carnegie that the secret is more powerful when it is uncovered and discovered, not simply handed over. However, Hill gives us a massive clue right at the beginning. He tells us that all achievement, all earned riches, have their beginning in an idea. And it all starts with one thing: a burning desire. This isn't just a wish. It's not a hope. A wish is passive. You might wish you had $1 million, but you don't really do anything about it. A burning desire, on the other hand, is an all-consuming obsession. It's a definite, pulsating force that transcends everything else. This is what Edwin C. Barnes had when he showed up at Edison's office. He didn't just want to work with Edison, he was determined to become his business associate. That was his one definite major purpose. He didn't get the partnership on that first day. Of course not. He got a menial job in the office for very little pay. But to Barnes, that didn't matter. It was a step toward his goal. Months went by. Years went by. For 5 long years, nothing seemed to happen. To everyone else, he was just another cog in the Edison machine. But in his own mind, Barnes saw himself as Edison's partner every single minute of every day. He was constantly intensifying his desire, keeping the fire lit. He never said to himself, "Well, I guess I'll change my mind and try for a different job." He said, "I came here to go into business with Edison, and I'll accomplish this if it takes the rest of my life." He burned all bridges behind him. He left himself no possible way of retreat. He had to win or perish. And then, one day, opportunity arrived. But it didn't announce itself with trumpets. It came disguised. Edison had just perfected a new device, the Edison dictating machine. His salesmen weren't enthusiastic about it. They didn't think it would sell. But Barnes saw his chance. He knew he could sell it. He told Edison, and he was given the opportunity. He sold it so successfully that Edison gave him a contract to distribute and market it across the entire nation. Out of that association grew the famous slogan, "Made by Edison and installed by Barnes." Edwin C. Barnes had literally thought himself into a fortune. He started with nothing but the capacity to know what he wanted and the determination to stand by that desire until he realized it. That is the power of a burning desire. Hill was so convinced of its importance that he laid out 6 precise, practical steps to turn such a desire into its financial equivalent. Think of this as the first practical exercise in the philosophy. First, fix in your mind the exact amount of money you desire. Don't just say, "I want a lot of money." Be definite. Is it $50,000? $1 million? There's a psychological reason for this definiteness. It gives your subconscious mind a clear target. Second, determine exactly what you intend to give in return for the money you desire. There is no such thing as something for nothing. What service, what product, what idea will you provide? Third, establish a definite date by when you intend to possess this money. This creates a sense of urgency and turns your dream into a timeline. Fourth, create a definite plan for carrying out your desire, and begin at once, whether you are ready or not, to put this plan into action. This is where most people falter. They wait. Don't wait. Fifth, write it all down. Write a clear, concise statement of the amount of money, the time limit, what you will give in return, and the plan. And sixth, this is perhaps the most important step of all. Read your written statement aloud, twice daily. Once just before bed, and once after waking up. And as you read, see and feel and believe yourself already in possession of the money. Now, this last part might feel strange at first. How can you see yourself with money you don't have? This is where the burning desire comes to your aid. If your desire is an obsession, you will have no trouble convincing yourself that you will acquire it. The object is to want the money so badly that you convince yourself you will have it. You must become money conscious until the desire for money drives you to create the plans to get it. This process of reading your goal aloud and visualizing it is what Hill calls autosuggestion. It is the principle of communication between your conscious and subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind is like a fertile garden. If you don't plant the seeds of the crops you want, weeds will grow in abundance. Thoughts of fear, doubt, and poverty are weeds that will grow without any effort. But thoughts of success, wealth, and achievement must be deliberately planted. Autosuggestion is how you plant them. But plain, unemotional words won't work. You can't just repeat a mantra and expect results. Your subconscious mind only recognizes and acts upon thoughts that have been mixed with emotion, with feeling. And the most powerful emotion of all? Faith. Faith is the head chemist of the mind. It's the element that gives life, power, and action to your thoughts. When you mix faith with your desire, your subconscious mind instantly picks up that vibration and begins the work of translating it into its physical equivalent. But how do you develop faith if you don't have it? Hill says faith is a state of mind that can be induced by repeated affirmations to the subconscious. In other words, by consistently following the 6 steps and practicing autosuggestion, you are, in essence, commanding your subconscious mind to believe. You are deceiving it into faith, and your subconscious, in turn, will act upon that belief and give you back definite plans for achieving your goal. You must act as if you were already in possession of the thing you desire. This is the key. Conduct yourself as the person you intend to become. There is no better story to illustrate the power of desire backed by faith than one from Napoleon Hill's own life. It's the story of his son, Blair. A few minutes after his son was born, the doctor delivered devastating news. The child had been born without any physical sign of ears. He would likely be deaf and mute for life. Hill was devastated, but in the secrecy of his own heart, he made a decision. He challenged the doctor's opinion. He decided that his son would hear and speak. Nature could send him a child without ears, but it could not force him to accept this reality. His desire was more than a wish, it became a burning obsession. He had written years before that our only limitations are those we set up in our own minds, and now he was being forced to test his own philosophy. Every day, he renewed the pledge he made to himself. As the boy grew, Hill and his wife noticed he had a slight degree of hearing. That was all the hope Hill needed. He began to work, creating bedtime stories designed to plant in his son's mind the idea that his affliction was not a liability, but a priceless asset. He sold him the idea that he had a distinct advantage over his older brother, that teachers would give him special attention, that people would pay him extra money for his newspapers because they could see he was a bright, industrious boy despite his handicap. The boy believed him. He never developed a self-conscious thought about his condition. Then, a breakthrough. The family bought a record player. The child was ecstatic with the music and would clamp his teeth on the edge of the wooden case to feel the vibrations. Years later, they would understand this was the principle of bone conduction of sound. Hill discovered he could speak to his son by touching his lips to the boy's mastoid bone, at the base of the skull. The desire was working. Nature, through some method of her own, was translating it into physical reality. The boy went through school, high school, and college without being able to hear his teachers except when they shouted at close range. He never learned sign language. His parents were determined he would live a normal life. Then, during his last week in college, a miracle happened. Through what seemed like mere chance, he came into possession of an electrical hearing device. He put it on, and for the first time in his life, he heard practically as well as any person with normal hearing. He had come into a changed world. He rushed to the phone and heard his mother's voice perfectly for the first time. But the story doesn't end there. The boy still had to convert his handicap into an asset. Intoxicated with his new world of sound, he wrote to the manufacturer of the hearing aid. Something in his letter caused the company to invite him to New York. While there, an idea flashed into his mind. He could help the millions of deafened people in the world by telling them his story. That idea became his new definite purpose. He devoted himself to creating a plan to reach the heart of hearing. The company gave him a position to carry out his ambition. The handicap that could have sent him to the street with a tin cup became the very medium through which he would render useful service to millions and find a successful career. Hill's son was not a deaf-mute because his father and mother shaped his mind. They mixed a burning desire with enduring faith and refused to accept defeat. Verily, a burning desire has devious ways of transmuting itself into its physical equivalent. Once you have this burning desire and unwavering faith, you need a place to forge them into reality. That place is your imagination. The imagination is the workshop of the mind. It's where all plans are created. Hill tells us there are two kinds of imagination: synthetic and creative. Synthetic imagination is what we use most often. It doesn't create anything new. Instead, it arranges old concepts, ideas, or plans into new combinations. This is the faculty used by most inventors. They take existing principles and combine them in new ways to solve a problem. Creative imagination is something different. This is the faculty through which we have direct communication with what Hill calls infinite intelligence. It's where hunches and inspirations come from. This is the faculty that gives us truly new, basic ideas. It's the direct link to the universal storehouse of knowledge. The creative imagination functions only when the mind is vibrating at an exceedingly high rate, stimulated by a strong desire or one of the other powerful emotions. Those who use this faculty are the genii of the world. But both forms of imagination are like muscles, they become stronger with use. To see how a simple idea, born in the imagination, can create a global empire, we need only to look at the story of the enchanted kettle. 50 years before Hill wrote his book, an old country doctor quietly slipped into a drugstore and sold a young clerk his entire life's savings, $500, for an old-fashioned kettle, a wooden paddle, and a small slip of paper with a secret formula written on it. The clerk, a young man named Asa Candler, was taking a huge risk. But what he really purchased was an idea. The kettle and the formula were just the physical tools. The magic happened when Candler mixed the secret instructions with a mysterious ingredient the doctor knew nothing about: imagination. That kettle began to overflow with gold. It's now one of the world's largest consumers of sugar. It gives employment to an army of clerks, artists, and advertising experts. It has turned a small southern city into a business capital. The influence of this idea now benefits every civilized country in the world, pouring out a continuous stream of gold to all who touch it. Every time you see the words Coca-Cola, remember that its vast empire grew out of a single idea, and the secret ingredient that Asa Candler mixed with the formula was his imagination. Ideas are the starting point, but an idea without a plan is just a dream. This brings us to the next critical principle: organized planning. You must create a definite, practical plan, or plans, for transforming your desire into reality. And here, Hill introduces one of his most famous concepts: the mastermind. A mastermind is a coordination of knowledge and effort, in a spirit of harmony, between two or more people, for the attainment of a definite purpose. Hill states it plainly: no individual has sufficient experience, education, and knowledge to ensure the accumulation of a great fortune without the cooperation of other people. Every great fortune began with this form of cooperative alliance. You must ally yourself with a group of people who can help you carry out your plan. Before forming your alliance, decide what advantages you can offer each member in return for their cooperation. No one will work indefinitely without some form of compensation, though it may not always be money. Then, arrange to meet with your group at least twice a week until you have perfected your plan. And the most important rule of all: maintain perfect harmony. The mastermind principle cannot exist where harmony does not prevail. When two or more minds come together in a spirit of harmony, they create a third, invisible, intangible force that can be likened to a third mind. This is where the psychic phase of the mastermind comes into play. The increased energy created through this alliance becomes available to every individual brain in the group. Think of Henry Ford. He began with poverty, illiteracy, and ignorance. But his most rapid strides came after he became personal friends with Thomas Edison, Harvey Firestone, and Luther Burbank. He absorbed the vibrations of thought from these great minds. He allied himself with them and created a mastermind that helped him build one of the largest fortunes in history. Men take on the nature, habits, and power of thought of those with whom they associate in a spirit of sympathy and harmony. The story of the creation of the United States Steel Corporation is perhaps the greatest example of a mastermind in action ever told. Charles M. Schwab, a 38-year-old steelman, conceived an idea in his imagination. He gave a speech at a dinner for some of the nation's most powerful financiers, including the great J.P. Morgan. He spoke for 90 minutes, laying out a clear-cut program for the aggrandizement of steel. His idea was to create a steel trust that would include the giant of them all, Andrew Carnegie's enterprise. He mixed his idea with faith and presented a plan. Morgan was captivated. Schwab then had to persuade Carnegie to sell. He did. Through that one idea, backed by a mastermind alliance, the United States Steel Corporation was born, and the value of the properties involved increased by an estimated $600 million overnight. Schwab's idea, plus the faith with which he conveyed it, was marketed for a profit of $600 million. But even the best laid plans can fail. And this is where the majority of people give up. Temporary defeat is not permanent failure. It may only mean that your plans are not sound. Build other plans. Start all over again. Thomas Edison failed 10,000 times before he perfected the incandescent light bulb. He met with temporary defeat 10,000 times. This brings us to two of the most important qualities you will ever develop: decision and persistence. After analyzing over 25,000 people who had experienced failure, Hill discovered that a lack of decision was near the top of the list of causes. Procrastination, the opposite of decision, is an enemy that every person must conquer. The people who accumulate fortunes have the habit of reaching decisions promptly and changing them slowly, if ever. People who fail have the habit of reaching decisions, if at all, very slowly, and changing them quickly and often. The majority of people are easily influenced by the opinions of others. They let newspapers and gossiping neighbors do their thinking for them. Opinions are the cheapest commodities on earth. If you are influenced by opinions when you reach decisions, you will not succeed in any undertaking. Keep your own counsel. Trust your own mind. When you begin to put these principles into practice, take no one into your confidence except the members of your mastermind group. Keep your eyes and ears wide open, and your mouth closed. Tell the world what you intend to do, but first, show it. And once you've made a decision, you must have the persistence to see it through. Persistence is an essential factor. The basis of persistence is the power of will. Weak desires bring weak results. If you find yourself lacking in persistence, the remedy is to build a stronger fire under your desires. Think of the story of R.U. Darby's uncle, who was caught by the gold fever and went west to dig and grow rich. He staked a claim, and after weeks of labor, discovered a vein of shining ore. He raised money for machinery and started bringing the ore to the surface. The first few cars proved they had one of the richest mines in Colorado. Then, something happened. The vein of gold ore disappeared. They drilled on, desperately trying to pick it up again, but to no avail. Finally, they decided to quit. They sold the machinery to a junkman for a few $100s and went home. The junkman, however, was smart. He called in a mining engineer, who calculated that the vein would be found just 3 feet from where the Darbys had stopped drilling. And that is exactly where it was found. The junkman took millions of dollars in ore from the mine because he knew enough to seek expert counsel before giving up. Darby learned a lesson he never forgot. He later went into the business of selling life insurance, and he owed his incredible success to the stickability he learned from his quitability in the gold mining business. He told himself, "I stopped 3 feet from gold, but I will never stop because men say no when I ask them to buy insurance. He became one of fewer than 50 men in the country who sold more than $1 million in life insurance annually. Failure is a trickster with a keen sense of irony. It takes great delight in tripping one when success is almost within reach. The hidden guide of life lets no one enjoy great achievement without passing the persistence test. Those who can't take it simply do not make the grade. So now you have the tools: desire, faith, autosuggestion, specialized knowledge, imagination, organized planning, decision, and persistence. These are the 8 practical steps. But Hill's philosophy goes deeper. He then introduces us to the more abstract, more powerful forces that work behind the scenes. He talks about the power of the mastermind, which we've already touched on. But then he dives into the mystery of sex transmutation, the subconscious mind, the brain, and finally, the sixth sense. He explains that the emotion of sex is, by far, the most powerful of all human desires. When driven by this desire, men develop a keenness of imagination, courage, and creative ability unknown to them at other times. When this powerful energy is harnessed and redirected, or transmuted, from purely physical expression to other lines of creative effort, it can lift one to the status of a genius. The men of greatest achievement, Hill's research showed, were men with highly developed sex natures who had learned the art of sex transmutation. Their achievements were often inspired by the influence of a woman. This isn't about suppressing desire, but redirecting it, channeling that immense energy into your definite chief aim. This powerful energy, this desire mixed with faith, is what communicates with your subconscious mind. Your subconscious is the connecting link. It's a field of consciousness where every one thought that reaches your objective mind is classified and recorded. It works day and night. It draws upon the forces of infinite intelligence to transmute your desires into their physical equivalent. You cannot entirely control it, but you can voluntarily hand over to it any plan or purpose you wish to be transformed. And you do this through the principles we've discussed. Your brain itself is both a broadcasting and a receiving station for thought. Your subconscious mind is the sending station, broadcasting the vibrations of your dominant thoughts. Your creative imagination is the receiving set, picking up thought vibrations from the ether. Autosuggestion is the medium by which you operate your station. Mastery of all these principles eventually leads to the apex of the philosophy, the development of the sixth sense. The sixth sense is that portion of the subconscious mind referred to as the creative imagination. It is the receiving set through which ideas, plans, and thoughts flash into the mind as hunches or inspirations. It is the door to the temple of wisdom. It is the medium of contact between the finite mind of man and infinite intelligence. Through the aid of the sixth sense, you can be warned of impending dangers and notified of opportunities. A guardian angel comes to your aid. The author doesn't claim this is a miracle, it's simply a natural law that most people don't understand because they haven't mastered the preceding principles. Hill describes how he developed his own sixth sense through a fascinating practice. Every night, he would hold an imaginary council meeting with a group of men he called his invisible counselors, men like Emerson, Lincoln, Carnegie, and Edison. He would call on them for the knowledge he wished to acquire, addressing them aloud and asking them to impress upon his subconscious mind their greatest qualities. Over time, these meetings became so realistic that the imaginary figures developed individual personalities. From these meetings, he received ideas, thoughts, and knowledge through what felt like inspiration. This is the path. From a single burning desire, through faith and planning, backed by persistence, you can learn to harness the most powerful forces within you and around you, until you can communicate with that infinite storehouse of knowledge and turn your thoughts into reality. But before you can use any of this philosophy, you must clear your mind of its greatest enemies. Hill identifies 3: indecision, doubt, and fear. Indecision is the seedling of fear. It crystallizes into doubt, and the two blend and become fear. Hill concludes his masterpiece by dedicating an entire chapter to outwitting the 6 ghosts of fear. These are the 6 basic fears that every human suffers from at one time or another. First is the fear of poverty. This is the most destructive fear. It paralyzes reason, destroys imagination, and undermines enthusiasm. It grows out of man's tendency to prey upon his fellow man economically. To conquer it, you must reach a decision to get along with whatever wealth you can accumulate without worry. Second is the fear of criticism. This fear robs man of his initiative and discourages the use of imagination. People permit relatives, friends, and the public to influence them so much that they cannot live their own lives. Put your foot upon the neck of this fear by reaching a decision not to worry about what other people think, do, or say. Third is the fear of ill health. This fear often produces the physical symptoms of the disease feared. It is kept alive by our own negative thoughts and by those who profit from it. Acquit yourself of this fear by the decision to forget symptoms. Fourth is the fear of loss of love. This is perhaps the most painful of the fears, growing out of jealousy and man's inherited polygamous nature. Master this fear by reaching a decision to get along without love, if that is necessary. Fifth is the fear of old age. This fear grows from the thought that old age may bring poverty or loss of freedom. Eliminate it by deciding to accept old age not as a handicap, but as a great blessing that brings wisdom, self-control, and understanding not known to youth. And sixth, the fear of death. This is the cruelest fear for many, born of religious fanaticism and the unknown. Relieve yourself of it by reaching a decision to accept death as an inescapable, and perhaps peaceful, transition. These fears are nothing but states of mind. And your state of mind is the one thing you have absolute and complete control over. To conquer them, you must make a decision. In the end, after all the principles have been laid out, Hill leaves us with a final, powerful truth. People who do not succeed have one thing in common: they know all the reasons for failure and have a collection of airtight alibis to explain away their own lack of achievement. If I had money, if I had a good education, if I had the time, he lists 57 of them. But alibis cannot be used for money. The world wants to know only one thing: have you achieved success? The philosophy in this book makes every one of those alibis obsolete. You are now in possession of the master key that unlocks the door to life's bountiful riches. That key is intangible, but it is powerful. It is the privilege of creating, in your own mind, a burning desire for a definite form of riches and backing that desire with faith, until it becomes a reality. Commentary. As we come to the end of our journey through Think and Grow Rich, it's worth pausing to reflect on just how profound this philosophy is. This book was written in 1937, on the heels of the Great Depression, a time when the fear of poverty was a ghost haunting every home. Yet, its message is timeless. In fact, in our modern world, filled with endless distractions and a culture that often encourages victimhood, Hill's emphasis on self-reliance, definiteness of purpose, and mind control is more critical than ever. The most powerful lesson, for me, is the simple yet earth-shattering idea that our thoughts create our reality. It's not just a nice-sounding platitude. Hill presents it as a tangible, scientific process. Our desires, when emotionalized with faith and backed by persistent action, literally set into motion a series of events, both within us and outside of us, that lead to their fulfillment. We become what we think about. What makes this book so enduring is that it's not just a collection of abstract theories. It's a practical manual filled with stories of real people who applied these principles and achieved extraordinary results. From Edwin C. Barnes, who refused to take no for an answer from the world's greatest inventor, to Hill's own son, who overcame a physical impossibility through the power of a shared, burning desire. These stories remind us that the principles aren't just for the giants of industry like Carnegie and Ford, they are for anyone with the courage to apply them. The concept of the mastermind is another cornerstone that feels incredibly relevant today. In an age of hyper-individualism, Hill reminds us that no one achieves great success alone. True power comes from aligning ourselves with others in a spirit of perfect harmony, creating a collective intelligence that is far greater than the sum of its parts. It's a beautiful counter-narrative to the lone genius myth. So, how can you start applying this philosophy today, right now? It doesn't have to be complicated. Here are a few simple actions you can take. First, do the first step. Take a piece of paper and write down your definite chief aim. What is the one thing you desire more than anything else? Be specific. Put a date on it. Describe what you will give in return. This act of writing it down is the first step in giving your intangible thought a concrete form. Second, start the habit of autosuggestion tonight. Before you go to sleep, read your statement aloud. Close your eyes and see, feel, and believe yourself already in possession of your goal. Feel the excitement, the gratitude. Do it again when you wake up. This small, 5-minute ritual, done consistently, will begin to reprogram your subconscious mind for success. Third, think about your mastermind. Who are the 1 or 2 people in your life who truly support your ambitions? Schedule a time to talk with them, not just about your goals, but to create a space of mutual encouragement where you can hold each other accountable and brainstorm together. The energy you create will be more powerful than you can imagine. In the end, Think and Grow Rich is a challenge. It challenges us to stop waiting for breaks and to start creating them. It challenges us to take absolute responsibility for our thoughts, because our thoughts will ultimately create our lives. It challenges us to conquer our fears, to banish our alibis, and to demand of life the riches we desire, knowing that if we have the desire, the faith, and the persistence, life has no choice but to pay the price we ask. That was a summary of Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. We've certainly journeyed through the core ideas today, but I have to be honest with you, a summary can only ever be a map. The real treasure is found when you walk the path yourself. The true magic happens in the quiet moments of reading, when a particular story or a simple phrase connects with you in a way you didn't expect. This overview is designed to help you decide if this book is worth your time and attention. If anything we've discussed has sparked a fire in you, then I encourage you to get a copy. Reading it isn't just about learning, it's an experience that can genuinely change the architecture of your mind. A link to the book is in the description below. Also, if you found this summary valuable and it gave you a new perspective, please take a moment to support the channel by hitting that like button and subscribing. That way, you won't miss our next exploration into another life-changing book from the billionaire's bookshelf. Let's continue to learn and grow together.